Okay, welcome back. We're going to be looking at respiration. So let's take a look at this model first. So we're going to be looking at a sagittal cut. And when we breathe air through the nose, air has to go through the nostril, or the nares, the external nares. What separates each nostril is the nasal septum. And in here is the nasal cavity. So we got the septum, the cavity. When you breathe air in through the nose, it has to be filtered. So it's going to clean the air and filter the air by way of these turbinates or concha. There's a superior, middle, and inferior nasal concha, or superior, middle, and inferior turbinate. And the spaces between these are called meatises, superior, middle, and inferior meatus. So the air is going to be spun through, filtered, and cleaned. We also have some sinuses here. We have a frontal sinus. We have a maxillary sinus. We have an ethmoid sinus and a sphenoid sinus. Air is breathed in. In this region here, at the back of the nose, is the nasopharynx. In the area of the mouth, here's the oropharynx. And near the throat is the laryngopharynx. If we go back into the nasal cavity and the back of the nasal cavity, here is the Eustachian Tube, named after the anatomist Bartolome Eustachian, or the auditory tube. It helps equalize the pressure. If you think about what happens in an airplane, how your ears get clogged. Here in the mouth is the hard palate, soft palate, uvula, epiglottis. When you eat food, the epiglottis moves down and closes off this region here, which is your windpipe, and directs food down the esophagus. Let's not forget about our tonsils here. We have our pharyngeal tonsil and the palatine tonsil. Okay? Let's look in the windpipe, the region of the trachea here. We have our vocal folds or vestibular folds. We have a false vestibular fold and a true vestibular fold. Remember, it's the true vestibular fold that actually makes the sound. Those vocal folds vibrating and resonating as you breathe air out helps create your voice, and the false vocal folds simply help direct the flow of air. Okay. All right, let's take a look now at the windpipe or trachea. So here is the only bone in the body that doesn't articulate with any other bone. That's called the hyoid bone. Below the hyoid bone is the thyroid cartilage, and in the center is the laryngeal prominence. And this is also known as the Adam's apple. When we move down below the thyroid cartilage, we then have the cricoid cartilage, and the rest of these incomplete rings called tracheal cartilage. We'll see that it doesn't make a complete circle as we follow it around the back. It doesn't complete its ring because, don't forget, we have the esophagus here. And here we have the arytenoid cartilage. And up here is the epiglottis. If we follow the trachea down, we move down into the right and left primary bronchi. Usually the right bronchi is more vertical and wider, which becomes an issue for aspirations. Most aspirations of objects will take place in this bronchi. So you have a primary, a secondary, and tertiary bronchi. And at the very, very end are the bronchioles. These are all bronchioles at the tip, which would lead into the deepest part of the lungs, where we have the alveoli, which is where the alveolar sacs are, the exchange of oxygen. So if we look at our two lungs, we'll see that there is a distinct difference. On the right lung, there is a superior, a middle, and inferior lobe separated by these fissures. Both the left lung and the right lung both have an oblique fissure. On the right side, there's a superior, middle, and inferior lobe. What separates the superior lobe from the middle lobe is this horizontal fissure. And what separates the middle lobe from the inferior lobe is this oblique fissure. On the left lung, there's only a superior lobe and an inferior lobe separated by this oblique fissure. The lung itself is surrounded by tissue called the visceral pleura, and the lung itself will sit in this cavity where we see the parietal pleura. So you've got the parietal pleura here, here's the lung, and you can see the parietal pleura here. And what you can't see too well, but what surrounds the viscera or the organ itself is the visceral pleura. Here you can see the trachea. You can see the carina, where there is a split into the two primary bronchi. Then we can see the secondary and tertiary. Within this region in here is the mediastinum. Okay? So we hope you find that helpful, and we'll see you soon.